Good morning, everyone. Now, a few days ago, before term began, I went to see the production of Into the Woods at the Theatre Royal. This is a famous musical, and it was written by Stephen Sondheim, who was involved in many of the most renowned musicals of the last 70 years, plays like West Side Story, A Little Night Music, and Sweeney Todd. The production was superb, and it was a great way to round off my holiday. Now, the plot is very complicated, and I won't go into all of the details of it, nor will I sing some of the absolutely banging tunes that drive the show on. I will, though, list a few of the characters in the play. Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, the Wolf, Rapunzel, the Giant, Jack of Beanstalk fame, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, and the Witch. Now, I'll bet that nearly everyone listening to this has heard of most of these names at some point in their life. When you were little, you may have been read stories that featured these characters. Or else you've watched the Shrek films, which riff on the themes of these tales. All of these characters come from famous fairy tales. And fairy tales tend to start with the phrase, once upon a time, and they typically involve magic. There are fairy tales from across national cultures, but the ones from Into the Woods come from a collection written in the early 19th century, so about 200 years ago. And it was written by the brothers Wilhelm and Jacob Grimm. The collection was called Kinder- und Hausmärchen, or Children and Household Tales. These tales are German in nearly every sense of that word. Think about what makes Germany peculiarly and particularly German. A lot of their cultural identity comes from the forest, and the forest appears as a character in many of these fairy tales, sometimes as a positive influence. Snow White flees into the woods to escape her evil stepmother who wants to kill her. In the woods, she finds the dwarves who save her from a ghastly fate. The woods can be dangerous, with Hansel and Gretel being abandoned in the forest by their parents and captured by a cannibalistic witch. However, they then escape into the woods, having killed the witch by pushing her into an oven. The stories have been made most famous by Disney, and I'm sure that nearly everyone has got Disney Plus at home and could, if they wanted, choose to watch Cinderella, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or Sleeping Beauty. If, though, you were reading them in the German, you would in fact be reading about Aschenputtel, Schneewittchen, or Dornröschen. Now, Disney did things to these stories. They sanitized them. They cleaned them up a little. They made them accessible for children. Go and look on Disney Plus. These films are cartoons with a U certificate. They aren't bloody, violent, or dangerous. The originals, though, are a very different set of stories. In the original version of Cinderella, Aschenputtel, her wicked stepsisters chop off parts of their feet to try and fit into the golden slipper and so marry the prince. At the end of the tale, they have their eyes pecked out by pigeons. Now, the brothers Grimm didn't in fact write these tales. They collected them. They were proper academics working in various universities in Germany, and they wanted to use fairy tales as a method of encouraging the German people to be more patriotic and to explore what it meant to be German. However, these fairy tales were often incredibly violent and bloody. They explored magic and sometimes looked at the breakdown of families. Think about the key baddies in fairy tales. They're usually evil step-parents who want to kill their stepchildren. Snow White, Hansel and Gretel, Cinderella, they're all victims of what today we would call child abuse or neglect. Each one of these fairy tales that I've mentioned contain actions that would be a significant safeguarding concern in 2022. The values that fairy tales promote can jar when we look back at them. The brothers Grimm in the early 19th century also sanitized some of the tales themselves. They were Christians and so made sure that baddies got their comeuppance, and people who behaved in a Christian fashion ended up doing okay and being rewarded. Christian values were very much promoted. As we've already seen, Disney, in the mid-20th century, emphasised the values that mattered then. The female characters are typically subservient and did what they were told, echoing the feeling of the time that a woman's place was in the home. The family unit was of paramount importance in these versions, and the people that broke that family unit, like the evil stepmothers and the witches, are often seen to be physically repulsive. The values which the stories promote shift depending upon when those stories are being told. Look at how fairy tales are told now and what they say about the values of our society today. Equality and diversity are front and centre of so many similar sorts of once upon a time stories. Disney is still the vehicle for delivering most of these tales. You look at the list of the big Disney films of recent years, and they, more often than not, feature female characters in the lead. No major shift there, you might think. Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, are all female characters. Well, yes, they are, but they all needed rescuing by men. Anna and Elsa in Frozen, though, they mostly do it themselves. Moana sails off with just a dopey rooster to find the demigod who can save her people. They are remaking 1989's The Little Mermaid, and I'll bet that Ariel isn't quite as meek and desperate to find a husband in the 2023 version. Diversity is a big thing in the movies now, and historically underrepresented groups can see themselves in the heroes in film. Encanto shows us a Colombian family, Moana, a Polynesian heroine. Coco is all about a young Mexican hero and deals with the tricky concept of death. Even on the small screen, what we see and what we value changes year on year and reflects how the values are changing. The news this week has announced 2 new characters to long-running children's shows. Thomas the Tank Engine has a new autistic character, Bruno the Brake Car, and in the world of Peppa Pig, the porcine heroine has a new friend, Penny Polar Bear, who has 2 mothers. These are great additions to our world, and they clearly reflect how the values of societies change. Same-sex couples and neurodiverse people are now being celebrated and not simply tolerated. This is undeniably a good thing. Society has changed a lot over my lifetime and will continue to change dramatically over the next 40 years. The values we care about now are not the same values that were seen as important years back. A report came out last week which focused on how many more children and young people are being brought up outside the traditional nuclear family. 44% of those born in the year 2000 will have spent some of their childhood up to the age of 17 outside a traditional nuclear family, compared with 21% of people born in 1970. Now, a nuclear family would normally be mum, dad and a couple of kids. And if you look back 30 years, commentators worried a lot about the death of the nuclear family. This report, though, says that what matters more than the traditional family is the quality of family relationships. It's about strong and lasting relationships, relying on each other and spending time together. Our values as a society are changing, and as a child of divorced parents and with 2 children and 2 stepchildren myself, I'm glad about the fact that we aren't quite as judgy about these things as we used to be. Schools too change and develop their values. Now, there are a good chunk of students at Prior today who have been here longer than me. I joined in 2019, and swiftly thereafter we were faced with the challenges of a global pandemic. So anyone who's in the lower 5th and joined in Baines joined at the same time as me. And the top 3 years of the school are all longer serving members of our community than I am. Now, we've got a lot of teachers here as well who've been at the school for a lot longer than me. Indeed, few, have been here for longer than I've actually been a teacher. I've spent a long time talking to staff and students over the past few years, and having had a lot of conversations with parents and prospective parents about what makes Prior. You'll have heard me talk a lot about the fact that we're a school with love at the centre of all we do. and it's certainly that which makes us unique. In addition, we have a core set of values that make us who we are, and they're values which are built upon our heritage and tradition, but also on the people who make up our community today, in September 2022. These values shouldn't come as a surprise to you. Indeed, the really observant among you will recall them from my end-of-year assembly back in early July. However, we're going to be talking a lot more about these values now and making sure that we are focused on living up to them. Our values should provide the how in how we behave, and they make our school tick. Now, the first value is courage. We want our students to be brave and courageous. We want every member of our community to act with courage every day. Courage to be true to themselves and to act honestly and with integrity. I firmly believe that every student knows what the right thing to do is in nearly every decision they take in life. To follow the path that may be harder but still right takes courage. And we want all prior students and indeed prior staff to do the right thing and to have the courage to do it, no matter the cost. Our second value is generosity. Now, you've all heard me talk about love. Love, though, comes from a place of generosity. Your teachers are here to serve you, not in a Downton Abbey servant fashion, but to help you be the very best version of yourself that you can be. We want students to think on how they can best serve others and best serve society. The work you do with charities, the work you do with younger students or those who need help and support, the kindness that you show day in and day out, all comes from a place of generosity. We've become a much more equal and diverse place in the last few years, and that comes from us being generous. We aren't a school that tolerates people who may be different. Instead, we're a school that embraces every single member of our community for who they are. That's the generosity that we want to see from all of us. Our final value is curiosity. We want our students to be curious about the world around them. We want them to be curious in every lesson they have, to be curious in their co-curricular pursuits, trying new things and looking to meet new people. We want a fully integrated school where our international students feel a real part of our community because they've been spoken to and included by all of our UK students who are curious about cultures outside their own. We want our students to question the world around them, not to unthinkingly plod along on a treadmill that they've landed on. Instead, we want them to ask questions of everything around them and to be restless until they've had the reasons for things explained to them. There we are then. 3 words: courage, generosity, and curiosity. They reflect who we are on our best day. And over the 3 years I've been at this school, I've seen these values grow in our community, and I've seen them in evidence every single day that I've been here. However, we can all do more to continually embody these values. We can all be more courageous, more generous, and more curious. If we all do this, students and staff, then we will be in a more cohesive, higher achieving, more loving community than even at present. This school is amazing. We make a huge difference to everyone who goes here and who works here. And I'd like us all to try and remember these values and make this an even more special place to be. Now we're going to finish today with a poem. And it's about one of our values, courage, which I think is the value of the 3 which underpins the other 2. You have to have courage to be generous and have courage to be curious. It's called See It Through by Edgar Guest. When you're up against a trouble, meet it squarely, face to face. Lift your chin and set your shoulders. Plant your feet and take a brace. When it's vain to try and dodge it, do the best that you can do. You may fail, but you may conquer. See it through. Black may be the clouds about you, and your future may seem grim. But don't let your nerve desert you. keep yourself in fighting trim. If the worst is bound to happen, spite of all that you can do, running from it will not save you. See it through. Even hope may seem but futile when with troubles you're beset. But remember, you are facing just what other men have met. You may fail, but fall still fighting. Don't give up, whate'er you do. Eyes front, head high to the finish. See it through. Have a great weekend.